My name is Adil Gadir. I am half Moroccan. My father is Moroccan. My mother is Dutch. I am 43 years old, married. I have 2 children. And I'm going to tell you my testimony of how I came to faith. During my youth, my father was occasionally present, but most of the times he wasn't there. And that fluctuated quite significantly until my 12th. Then he disappeared for good. Because of that trauma, I started smoking cigarettes when I was 11. When I was 12, I started smoking weed. And from the age of 13, I ended up in the house music world. That's when I started doing drugs. Extreme amounts, extreme days. I really had a very wild life. That life led to nothing, and I had enough of it since 1997. That is when I felt like I went out. That took me another year. I was so stuck on the reputation, stuck on the money, I wasn't exactly a good person, to say the least. I dabbled in drugs, both using and dealing drugs on and off. Then a cry came from within me saying, I am done. I want a different life. I want peace. And then a friend came my way, whom I have known since I was little. We grew up together. He spoke to me one day when I was just walking outside, and he gave me a shove. He said, do you think you are tough with your friends and with you drugs and with your house music? That moment really startled me. I thought, hey, what's this? I started hanging out with him. Then I began to distance myself from the world I was a part of. I was at his house every day, and then he began telling me stories about God, faith, and the things of the world. That's where my faith started, in a very quiet, subtle way, because I didn't learn anything about religion from home. My father, who is Muslim, left when I was young, and my mother doesn't actually follow any religion, no Catholicism either. This friend planted the first seed of faith within me. And because he had a discussion with the father of a friend of mine about the faith, the father of that friend of mine came back to faith. He was once at a Pentecostal church, but he left there. We always gathered at his house. We grew weed. We did all kinds of bad things there. And those two get into a discussion about faith, which is why Paco, as he was called, got really angry, saying, and that's not right and that it's not true. And the fire of faith was rekindled in him again. He ended up being the key to getting me, along with a few other friends, to go to church. And that happened right at a time when I was in a relationship. And in that relationship, we had already broken up about 5 times. And then, combined with those other problems I had, I was at a point that I was really done with it. And then he asked Adil, come along sometime. And then I said, well, I'll come along sometime. I have nothing left to lose. We went with 4 friends to an African church. We stepped in there and we saw a lot of people. I thought, yeah, okay, whatever. Until we sat down and the man started speaking. It was the preacher, the pastor of the church. And that man was talking about my life. And I thought, how is that possible? And I felt the energy coming over me. I was like, wow. And all the misery, the tears, the pain and sadness lifted away from me. And that evening he asked 5 times for people with problems to come forward, and I went to the front 5 times, and that's crazy, because the year prior, my then girlfriend and I had broken up 5 times, as if every blow I had dealt with during that period had to be repaired. And then I went out with tears of jubilee, as they say, because I went in broken, and I left relieved while tears rolled down my cheeks. And I said, this is worth repeating. The next week we went to another church he used to attend with the 4 of us. I didn't really like it there. It was okay, but it didn't really appeal to me. And the next week we went to the church where I have been for 22 years, and I really learned a lot there, experienced a lot, got built up a lot. And when I walked in there, I think it was a Saturday, it was music night, and I can remember that there were all kinds of people walking around. There was music. It was just a lot of fun. I thought, are these Christians? This is anything but boring. I thought to myself, this is where I'll stay. This is a nice place. And so I went to church once a week, after a certain period of time, twice, 3 times a week, because they had services there on Wednesday and 2 services on Sunday, and music evenings on Saturday. Then after a period of time, I also went out to evangelize on the streets. I started doing that after my baptism. At first, I just observed a lot. In that church, I really learned a lot and saw a lot. I also gained a lot of knowledge of the Bible. It's truly a Bible-believing church. The gospel really came to life for me. The problems I had at that time were mainly my health. At that point, I had started 5 companies and 3 times another company, and then went to work somewhere else again. Second day at work, I had a car accident, 200 meters of guardrail under a truck, left side of the highway against the guardrail. Ultimately, this resulted in selling my apartment I had in Den Bosch with a residual debt. I also had other debts. I ended up in debt consolidation, and then doors started to open for me because the social worker I had, who guided us in that debt restructuring process, as an expert by experience, because I was quite radical in my way of working with him, because I was chasing him saying, that invoice is still not paid, what about that? He says, what I am experiencing now normally never happens. Normally we have to chase the clients, not the other way around. So he says, before you go, can I ask you something? Would you like to help me in my work? This is how I became a budget coach. And that's how my initial networks formed as I started assisting people. And soon the role of the social worker came into the picture. And then I also noticed, hey, I think I'm becoming more like Jesus. Through all the misery I've been through, everything that wasn't pleasant, I have now been able to transform into fruits, a strength. As Paul also says, for when I am weak, then I am strong. And so the first doors have opened and I have created a network. That is when the first ideas of my company Mozorg and the Monisha Foundation emerged. Those are 2 organizations that I set up. And now I help a lot of people who, through misery and pain, due to illness or something, no longer have any hope. And then I bring hope again with my organization, with my story and testimony. Jesus has always been central, even in the periods of the epilepsy, and that is really important. What came to my mind very strongly at one point was, I have to heal first, then I can do things. And that really became a blockage. God showed me at some point, when you cling so hard to healing, healing becomes a kind of idol, which then comes first place. From the moment I started thanking God for the epilepsy and saw, hey, God is worth thanking, things started to change. Doors opened, and then I entered a period of what I just talked about, that the doors were opening, things were starting to work together for the better in my life. And now I can indeed say thank you for the epilepsy, because without it I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't have my company Mozorg, I wouldn't have the Monisha Foundation, I wouldn't have been a speaker or in our Moroccan church that we have once a month. Because I speak there regularly, it's really about the fact that you persevere, that everything you're going through can be used for good, Romans 8:28. And whatever happens, the Bible is always faithful. For scriptures such as, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. The righteous falls 7 times, yet rises again. I am a living testimony of that, a living example of that. I could have given up a long time ago and lived on welfare and do nothing anymore. But then I wouldn't have made a difference in the world. And now I am director of Mozorg. I have a thriving business that works with people with a large distance to the job market, with a large distance to society. And I am happy, very happy, that God has allowed all those things, for he himself does not bring them, but he allows them, and that he used them for good, for the honor of his kingdom, that I can be a living testimony for many people. I speak regularly in churches, and it seems that God is opening more and more doors, that I'm visiting more and more places where I can share my testimony to bring that strength and that hope. That is also the slogan of my company, and that is what I really stand for. A little bit of hope gives life. There is always hope. This is how we live, from hope to hope. That is the life of a Christian. Not always easy, but always good. Not always simple, but always fair. God is truly always good, even if we don't see it. In retrospect, we know that it was always a good thing. And I can say with full conviction, yes, amen. When I now see what I have, thank you for the misery, thank you for the car accident, thank you for the epilepsy, thank you for the brain surgery I had in 2016 to get rid of epilepsy. Because that also worked. All these things happen in the same period. And that's just, who could think of something like that? That you reach your destination through that misery. Because if everything always goes well, then it is very easy to serve God, to believe in God. But especially in this world where we go from bad to worse and from misery upon misery. This world that sees no hope. Because if we look around us, we see plenty of misery. from earthquakes in Morocco, Turkey, floods, disasters, you name it. There is always hope, and that hope is Jesus Christ, and that God is who I serve, and I stick to that. No matter what happens to me, I will never give up. That's why I am who I am, because of Jesus Christ. Never give up. There is always hope.